Hello again, and welcome to Faith, Family, and Politics. I'm your host, Joshua Cummins.
We're going to have a really big show today.
That's our good friend, Louis Rodriguez, here in studio. How you doing today, sir?
I'm doing fine. Thank you for having me.
And before we do any further introductions, I just want to go through and do a little bit of a promotion for Revolver Broadcasting because Faith, Family, and Politics is a part of that family. That's Alan, Louis, and myself. Sterling over there in the producer's chair is also part of this nice little company, and I hope you guys become familiar with our shows.
Because we're not going anywhere.
Yeah, that's right. And we're looking to, not only get these messages out to you and the things that we're doing, but we want you to be part of our family and pay us so we can keep doing it so that we're not so poor. Okay? Dang. So you're going to check out not only this show, obviously, Faith, Family, and Politics, comment, share, all that good stuff. It's wonderful. It's beautiful. But then you're going to have to go over and check out this guy next to me, Alan McFarland's show, The Laughing Libertarian. How you doing today, sir?
Great. And for 3 cents a day.
You can help an Alan.
That's true. Absolutely.
Can help keep food in my fridge.
by paying the electric bill.
He's hungry. Yeah. It's gone up. And as I introduced before, Mr. Louis Rodriguez, he's got his show, Rodriguez Rants. So make sure and check that out as well because episode 2 drops very soon. So be on the lookout for that. Alan's got a new episode coming up this week.
I have to.
It's required. No,
I'm really big on gun rights, and there's one right in my ribs right now.
Yeah, there's some things happening.
There was some whip cracking earlier. That's what I heard.
It was.
Yeah. It was like
it was a dreaded march.
Yeah. Okay. That's why you're wearing double shirts, so you don't see the
lashings,
the lash marks.
So the guy over there you've heard doing a little bit of sound effects. That's the guy that's bringing the message this week. He's been on here before. It's his second time back, and his name is Jeremy Hess. Thank you for coming, sir.
I don't have a podcast or anything. I'm just wandered in off the streets like, do you guys have a podcast I can be a part of? Please, sir, can I have some more?
And then he's here for a second time, so it was like, cool. He went down our street again. So
yeah, there you go. I wondered back. I was like, it wasn't bad the first time. So, well, maybe that guy was.
Just a few flashings, yeah.
Both times there were fresh cookies upstairs, so I don't know if that had played into it.
Okay. Well, don't out me on that, all right?
Yeah, our green room, my wife, Laura, has been
They were
providing.
really good cookies. I'm sorry. And she gave milk with them, so can't pass up on that.
Your other job is Santa Claus, apparently. Milky cookies, yeah.
Yeah, I don't give any presents though. I just eat the cookies.
Well, your presence is enough.
There you go. See,
it is a present.
That's swell. That's swell of you to say. Thanks.
All right, Mr. Hess, you've got a message for us this week. What's your title?
I do. Title I gave it was Fear Management.
Fear management.
Yes.
Like Batman's?
Well, he puts the fear into you.
Oh, okay.
I guess that is managing other people's fear, which is what the federal government. But we're getting ahead of ourselves here. Sorry.
What I loved was he said it was the title I gave it. It wasn't the title it earned.
No. And it's going to pay me back later. I'm just saying.
Very socialist of you, sir.
Yeah, I know. It's going to pay an interest, though. I'm just saying.
Well, we're interested.
It's in a food line. I had to, give it a little bit of help and. Yeah.
All right. Would you like to lead us in prayer?
Let's do it.
Cool.
Dear Lord, we thank you for this day. We thank you for this time we have. We ask that your blessing would fall upon us. Your Holy Spirit would be with me as I bring forth the message tonight. And Lord, we just want to take a time right now to mention those who lost loved ones in Texas. We think of the students, families, and the family members of the teachers that lost their lives this week in a very tragic event. And Lord, we just want to pause and lift up those families who are dealing with some very tragic and sorrowful moments right now. And we know that it's going to be very difficult for a time. And we just ask that you be close beside those who are dealing with this loss, that you be with those students who have witnessed this and experienced this, Lord. You know the psychological effect that has on kids and on parents and on other adults, Lord, and I ask you would just be with each one. And so we just lift them up before you today and ask that your comfort and your strength would be with them. And So we just lift them up before you today, Lord. So again, we ask that you would be with us as we go through this podcast, Lord, that you would give us the words to say, the wisdom to say them, and always saying, do we just want to give you praise in your name. Amen.
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 All right. So this week was reminded once again, fear is very much ever present in our society, in our world right now. And this is thoughts that I had before, so I kind of didn't really plan anything out. It was just more of, this is my thoughts that have accumulated over the last couple of years with the pandemic, with the rioting that we saw during the Year of Love, as other people have said, called it, and just witnessing. We've seen a couple shootings just recently, and I know I remember the first one I remember was the Columbine shooting, and what that meant. Seeing that, hearing about it, knowing that. I mean, there were probably other ones. That was the one that just stuck out the most in my mind. Yeah. And so I don't ever remember having that fear of, someone may be coming into our school. But it made you think about a lot of things. And as a kid, I think I probably did deal with some fear at that time, just thinking about, wow, there's people that could do the same thing. You just never know. And so, I think the other moment that really stuck out to me as far as feeling fear was right after 9/11, or when 9/11 happened. I was in the Marines at the time, stationed out in San Diego with the F-18 squadron. I was doing NBC training, which is nuclear, biological, chemical training, gas masks, and all that stuff. And as I was driving, they said, Cessna, that's what they were saying at that time, had flown into one of the Twin Towers. And I'm like, how did you miss that? How do you fly into a tower? Yeah. And then as I got to the training facility, which was a little bit off-site of the main base, we found out, well, it wasn't just that. And I remember that night going back, driving around, they had put concrete dividers. Yeah, so you had to go around them. You couldn't go straight through. And the guards were not just carrying pistols. They were, had flaks and were carrying shotguns as well. So we just didn't know. And we got back, and it was just like, what does this mean? What does this mean for, us as military personnel? What does this mean for our country? I had a journal entry. I wish I'd brought that with me, but and I remember reading that a couple of weeks ago, and just all that stuff came back. And it's not a natural fear. It's just like all the security you felt about our country just kind of evaporated in a very quick moment. And you just saw the terror on people's faces on the TV videos. I mean, of anybody who was there or experienced it or had family there. You didn't know. You saw the devastation in Manhattan. You saw it in Washington, D.C. I actually went to the place where the plane crashed in Pennsylvania, and I got to see that, and that was just a moving tribute to those people who said, you know what? Talk about fear. They had every right to say, we're just going to go with this. I don't know what's going to happen, but I don't want to get hurt. I don't want to get killed. They said, nope. We're going to do something about this, because they knew, someone found out, hey, they're crashing planes into places. I don't know where we're going, but it's going to be, we got to do something. And they managed that fear. I'm not saying they didn't feel fear, but they managed that enough to say, let's do something about this. And when you go to this memorial, I mean, it gives you chills just thinking about it. And not really a burial site, but they have a large stone. And it's a stone that's from Pennsylvania. Like, it's stone from Pennsylvania. And it's this, I forget how heavy it is, like a couple tons, over the site where the plane crashed. And so you just have that memorial that you can see. And you can't walk out there. Only the family members or relatives that had people that died in that crash can go out there and walk in the grass and go to that place. But you can see it, and it just reminded you, even though there was fear, there was that sense of, man, they did something. They did something to stop something very evil from happening. And my other thought was, we talk about it's Memorial Day weekend this weekend. And as a veteran, I've known guys. There was a gentleman that I went through boot camp with who died early on in the conflict before I was heading over to Iraq or Kuwait during the war in Iraq. My brother lost a close comrade of his and 2 other Marines to an IED. So he knew people that, lost their lives. But, you saw that picture I had on my computer back at work where it was guys, someone had snapped a picture of guys leaving the LAVs going into the Normandy beaches. And it's just this picture of these guys struggling through the water to get to the beaches, and you can see the hills where they have to hit, and you know what's waiting for them. And it was called Going into the Jaws of Death, basically. And I was listening to a audiobook about that, the D-Day landings and what that first wave experienced and the following waves. And if you came out of there saying I wasn't afraid, the other guys would call you a liar. You know there was fear. But they said there was just something inherent in what they were trained to do that just pushed that fear aside and said, even though I feel this fear, I still have a job to do. I still have things I have to do. And so we had guys that were marking safe areas or landmine areas, and they were getting killed. And, people clearing away, obstructions and ways for guys to get onto the beach and get off the beach and hit the hills where these, the Germans were. And so, to me, that's managing your fear. That's saying, I still feel fear, but I'm still doing something. I'm still moving forward. I'm still making progress because we have a job to do. We have to, stop this. We have to put a stop to this tyranny. And, protecting the guys to the left and to the right is probably what was on their mind primarily. But they knew this was a job. This was the beginning of something that was going to, defeat the enemies that
was bigger than themselves.
Exactly. Sure. They were just a small piece in a big puzzle, So that's what my thoughts usually go to, especially on Memorial Day. But like I said, fear management. Everybody feels fear. You can probably tell me stories. I know Louis could. I know Josh could. Alan, anybody that within the sound of our voice or that's watching or listening can tell us stories of when they were afraid, when they felt fear, but they still, hey, I got to push through this. I got to do what I have to do. And so, we all witnessed, via the news, what happened in Texas. And, that's the worst feeling is seeing young people, especially that age, experiencing something like that, experiencing that amount of fear at a very young age. And to me, that's just monstrous. I can't imagine seeing someone or knowing somebody of that age, or even a teenager. Any child experiencing something like that. And I remember before, like after 9/11, it was more of a bipartisan thing of, well, yeah, this is a terrible situation. There's a terrible event that happened, yet let's take time to mourn. Let's take time to heal. Let's take time to just put politics aside and focus on surrounding these people with love and care and prayers and all this, the positivity that we experienced. And it's like we're falling away from that. It feels to me like we're falling away from that. And instead of saying, let's get it, time to heal, it's more just, it's political sound bites. It's more, I'm going to use this to prove a point that we need to do this or we need to do that. And it's like, what happened to that? What happened to that time where we just, instead of, experiencing it and, praying and thinking through and, not going based off emotion, what do we do? Why don't we do that anymore?
They took God out of it.
Yeah. And that's a lot of things. And a lot of it is we just don't have that conscience. We don't see conscience with regards to this. So I did have some scriptures that that I've found on this. The first one, the main verse, is found in John 16:33. And it reads like this: "In this world you will have trouble, but take heart, I have overcome the world." I being God the Father. And that's, as Christians, that is what we mainly focus on in times like this. It's hard to look in society and see, try to find hope. You'll have guys that stand up and say, you know what, let's just, take time to mourn through this, or, hey, we're going to change things. We're going to try to protect our children more. We're going to set people up that can protect them from things like this happening. Finding out why people like this young man who committed this heinous act do things like this, because it's not just a limited thing. We see this more often, it seems like. So, what are we doing to help our kids adjust to what they see around them? Because I was like thinking about it earlier. It's like all they hear and see is everything on the news is negative, and there's wars, and there's disease, and there's everybody's shuttered up in the homes, and it's like we're locking down and all this other stuff, and it's like it's taking away their hope in a lot of way. And if there are psychological issues involved, it's exasperating them. I think I said that wrong, but it's making it worse, to the point where you see what we saw this week in Texas. And it's like, what are we doing to help our kids adjust to that, or to find that positivity instead of just focusing on all the bad stuff that's happening around the world? Because that's a lot what we see in the news is all the bad stuff. We don't hear a lot of the good stuff. We just hear, oh, this person did this and against this person, and the violence. And, of course, the Depp Heard thing is, that's crazy, crazy story in and of itself. But it's like, wow, people are just doing some crazy stuff out there, And then you have all these, people going out there and virtue signaling, saying, oh, look, this is why we can't have guns and all this other stuff. And it's like, there's something deeper to that. There's something deeper than just that. And a lot of it has to do with what we're talking about, which is fear. They've allowed fear into their hearts to the point where it changes them into something that maybe their parents didn't want to see them that, but they're just like, I don't know what else to do.
If they had that verse of assurance right there.
Yeah,
right there. That one verse. Can you read that one for me again? If you don't mind?
It's in this world you will have trouble, but take heart, I have overcome the world.
Right. So, like, if a young person hears that, just those assuring words right there, I think that would be a multitude right there.
Or that at least
God's
open up or at least open up questions like, who is this God? What does God have to do with this? And of course, like you said, they're taking God out of schools and everything like that and saying, well, can't talk about that. It's like, we can't even talk about the idea about that. I mean, we're saying, hey, this is, if we're trying to be equal in how we teach kids, well, give them all the ideas about that, everything that's out there, and help them, let them make up their mind instead of, this is what we're going to teach them, or this is how we teach them, and just, it's strictly this one way of thinking. And if you can't think like that, well, we're not going to listen to you, or you're going to be canceled,
Sounds like they need their next steps in fear management.
Yeah. Yeah. So the other verse that we had was found in Psalms. A lot of these were in Psalms, interestingly enough. But the next one was
David
Psalms.
knew a lot about fear.
Yeah. If anyone knew fear, I mean, his first job was facing off against a lion and a bear, and then facing off against, a giant. I mean, I would imagine he felt fear, but he obviously did what he did because he had confidence in the Lord. It wasn't just oh no, it's a giant like all the other Israelites are doing, even the king. It was like, yeah, but God can take care of this, So Psalms 34, 4-7 says, I sought the Lord, and he answered me. He delivered me from all my fears. Those who look to him are radiant. Their faces are never covered with shame. This poor man called, and the Lord heard him. He saved him out of all his troubles. The angel of the Lord encamps around those who fear him, and he delivers them. So I know Louis had talked about angels before, but I mean, I thought that was a pretty apropos verse, that the Lord sets angels around about us. And especially probably in times where it's, things are going really bad and we just feel like, I can't deal with this. I can't handle this. I would imagine that's the time that the Lord's presence is most dear and most, present in our lives, because he helps us to manage whatever we're dealing with, whether it be sadness, depression, or fear. So I thought that was a really good verse as well. And I don't want to take up everybody. If somebody has something to say, I'll give them the opportunity. Because I can talk. You can ask my dad that. I can talk. But then the next one was Psalm 27, 1 through 3, which reads, "The Lord is my light and my salvation. Whom shall I fear? The Lord is the stronghold of my life. Of whom shall I be afraid? When the wicked advance against me to devour me, it is my enemies and my foes who will stumble and fall. Though an army besiege me, my heart will not fear. Though war break out against me, even then I will be confident." So, right there we talk about war. We talk about, it's not just a physical war, a violent war that we see like we saw in Afghanistan and Iraq. It can be a war within the society that we're talking about. And, it's almost come to blows. It has come to blows, really, if you think about it.
Even a personal war, a spiritual war. We all have those struggles.
Yeah. And we all have those people that are set against us. And we know that in a spiritual sense, we know it's not those people specifically, it's the enemy using those people to make us feel like, you need to be afraid, causing that fear.
The fear of being good and bad, and also challenging who you are.
Yeah. And challenging who you are, I think that's important, but not to the point where you're changing the very essence of who you are. There's change. Everybody changes. Alan's probably not the same person he was when he was a kid. I know I'm not. Josh, maybe.
Yeah, pretty big kid at heart.
But if you're doing bad, there's always a change.
Yeah.
You change to be good.
Right.
Yeah.
You learn. It's a maturing process. You know the difference. You learn the difference between right and wrong. Mm-hmm. If you don't, well, it's going to be a very difficult life for you. That's for sure.
Certainly.
And then the other verse I had was, I think this is the second to last one. "They will have no fear of bad news. Their hearts are steadfast, trusting in the Lord. Their hearts are secure. They will have no fear. In the end, they will look on look in triumph on their foes." So I thought that was pretty accurate. They will have no fear of bad news. We've all gotten bad news. We've seen bad news happen this week. Mm-hmm. I think it was last week before. It was in Buffalo. And obviously, like I said, going back to 9/11, that was devastating, not just to, a group of people.
The world witnessed that, yeah.
Yeah. You saw it live on action. Seeing those buildings crumble was just like, is this really happening? That surreal feeling of, oh, wow, this is serious. There was just a lot of lives that were lost all in that very short amount of time, And
but if only we could go back to our past selves and give ourselves that first verse you read.
Yeah.
During that time for the assurance, right?
Yeah, and I'm sure there were people that looked to the Lord, looked to the Word to find solace, to find help, to find strength. I know when I was in boot camp, I didn't know everything there was to know about boot camp. Never shot a weapon before in my life. So I'm like, man, I want to get through this the first time, because I did not want to go through it again, because if you don't make it through the first time, they recycle you, as they say, and you go through boot camp from the day one on up. So I'm like, I want to get through this the first time. So I know I was praying. I know there was fear, like, oh, I don't want to be left behind. I want to get through this the first time. And I had other people praying for me, obviously. And even though there was that fear, it was manageable fear, And that was, again, because of the prayers that I was praying, having that little pocket testament that they give you, and then knowing that I have family, up in New York and in other places that were praying for me, helped me to manage that fear in a very productive manner, you know?
Well, there's no man in this world that could say that they never have fear.
Exactly.
We all have fear in us.
Yep.
No matter where we're at.
Absolutely.
All we have to do is conquer our fear.
Yeah. Yep. And sometimes it feels like you can't conquer that fear, or you can't manage that fear.
There's
and
some
those are the
people
times
like that, yeah.
And there are times where you buckle under that, or you just like fight through it, you know? And part of the training that you get in the military and the Marines, especially for guys that, you know, fought ground side, especially, you know, back in, World War II, when those guys were hitting the beach, that was the first combat they'd seen. And they were going against an enemy that had been fighting for the last, 3 years. So it was a battle-hardened enemy. These guys, it was the first time they'd faced combat, faced death, mortality. And they said at some point, a lot of these guys said that training kicked in, whether it was that drill instructor in their ear or drill sergeant in their ear saying, you get this, you do that. They had that in their head. They're like, well, yeah, I feel afraid right now, but I'm going to focus on what I need to do. And they said that training kicked in, and that was what saved their lives. And, to me, that's like, some of the stories I heard in this audiobook about D-Day. I mean, what they saw, what they witnessed firsthand, I mean, I can't imagine it, And being there on 9/11, seeing those buildings crumble, can't imagine that. I see the videos, and I can imagine it, but it's just not the same as I was there. I saw that, And
I was a block away when that happened.
Were you?
I was watching them come down. I saw people even jump off the buildings trying to save themselves.
Yeah.
They had the fear of getting burned.
Yeah.
So they decided to jump instead of burning.
Yeah. And like I said, that's just one of those decisions. I can't imagine that, having that decision,
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, again, that's managing fear. You knew it was death either way, and making that choice. This is what I'm going to do. So, yeah. And the final verse I had was Proverbs 1:7, which says, "The fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge, but fools despise wisdom and instruction." Now, this is interesting that we always heard about the fear of the Lord growing up, and I thought, wow, so I just got to be, sitting here like worried about everything, like God's going to hit me with a hammer or something when I mess up. And this is the big difference between having unmanaged fear, or as I call it, unadulterated fear, or unmitigated fear, where it's total control of you, and you're just, either you're running for your life, feeling that fear. I can imagine that's, you out-of-body experience. But there's a difference between that and fearing, having an intelligent fear about something, having an common sense fear. I think that's what it is. Knowing, hey, I can mess with that scorpion or I can mess with that copperhead, but I know if I do, that thing's either going to stab me or bite me. So I'm just going to avoid that. Other than, being that person, like you see a snake and like, and you start running away, there's a difference, And what I was taught about the fear of the Lord was having enough to know that he judges our actions wholly and without bias. He judges our actions. He knows our internal thoughts, what we go through. He knows what we've done. And there's no hate or malice. It's just he knows yes or no. You make it to heaven, or you're going to hell. Mm-hmm. And it breaks his heart, I know, to see people having to send people to hell. But that's the fear. It's like, don't fear what men can do to the body. Fear what the enemy can do to your soul. There's a difference between, well, I'm dead, and now I'm, it's beyond that, beyond death, that we have to worry about. But knowing that the Lord is the perfect judge, he knows exactly what we've done in our lives. If we've asked, we've had, that time of forgiveness where we gave our life to the Lord and said, you know what, I know I'm going to make mistakes, but Lord, I'm going to trust you that you forgive me, that you're going to show me mercy and grace. That's where that fear comes from, knowing I don't want to be in that place where God says, you didn't make it, sorry, and now I have to send you to a place I don't want to have to send you. And knowing that fear, that's where that fear is. Not just, I'm afraid of everything I do and say and everything. You live like that, you're going to be like, no, I don't want to be this Christian thing. This Christian thing is crazy, man. I got to be afraid of every action, move I take, and every word I say. I got to ask for God forgiveness every 5 seconds, And I lived my life like that before, where it was just like unmanaged fear. Oh God, I'm sorry. I did that. I didn't mean to say that. I didn't mean it. It's like God knows. He
does.
And
he
if
does know, he knows your heart.
Yeah.
He knows what you're really feeling.
Yeah.
And if you're lying, he would know.
And the thing is, we know that Jesus' blood covers our sins.
Mm-hmm.
It's not that we live perfect lives after we get saved. It's that what Jesus did on the cross and when he was raised from the dead, that takes care of it. As long as we're faithful to the Lord, as long as we're doing what we know to the best of our knowledge, we're doing what the Lord asks us, and we're being a good example to those around us and living our lives as biblically as possible. That's where that fear of the Lord is not just a fear, like, oh my word, everything I say and do is wrong, and I have to ask forgiveness all the time.
Yeah, but if I go back to your very first verse,
yeah,
he's managing our fear for us. So,
right.
So like I say, next time someone comes to you and they say, I'm going to make you fear, say, let me talk to my manager. Hold on. And you clasp your hands together and you pray.
Right.
To help you out.
Right. So there was a quote I found too. I thought this was a pretty good quote. It says, it's okay to be scared, but don't let that fear overpower your mind and control you. And like I said, a lot of times that's what, not just our government. I don't want to rag on them. I mean, we're going to rag on them later. So, and I know Alan's giving me that look like, are you serious?
He's been champing at the bit. That's what he's here for this week.
I know. So, I mean, yeah, our government does it a lot, and not just left. It's on the right too, where we just hear so much stuff where it's like they're monopolizing on the death of kids. It's like, just let it go, man. Don't just say something, because everybody wants to say something and go based off emotion. But it's like, let's just do something, and we'll just trust that, what we say holds some weight, and, stop with the words, offer your comfort and say, hey, we're going to figure this out. Well, let's give this a little time to breathe.
They're operating on fear and they're not managing
exactly. Or they're, like I said, they're monopolizing on fear, and that's where it really frustrates my grace. So
I mean, it's the best tool, right?
it is. It is.
When we stop worrying about something, they can't control us.
Right.
You look at people who are knowledgeable about something and they stop fearing something.
Yeah, exactly.
And then you look at other people who are constantly fearing things. And we've seen this in numerous different fashions, especially over the last couple of years, right? Mm-hmm. We've seen it, albeit, biological. You see it all over the world with warlords and terrorists and things like that. These people, you always kind of go, I'm one of those people who, when someone makes me fear them, it only happens for a few seconds, and then something clicks in my brain and goes, now I'm offended that you made me fear you for a second, and now I'm angry, and now I'm going to show you why you need to fear me. But having that mentality, you look at other people in other countries, and you go, why can't you just stand up? Why can't you do that? And it's just because they've been given fear. They've been fed fear. This isn't today's fear. This isn't last week's fear. This is a lifelong situation where they have been raised to fear someone, something bigger than them, scarier than them, greater than them, worse than them.
It's almost genetic, really.
Right.
Because when the most frustrating thing for me was when we watched what happened in Afghanistan. Now, I wasn't unrealistic. I had an idea we're going to pull out of there at some point. I knew it deep down in the marrow of my bone. I just knew we were going to pull out of Afghanistan, and I didn't know what was going to happen. I knew there was going to be infighting, and I knew the Taliban was going to do what it always does. But when we watched what we saw, the video footage of, just something that you see in movies, And then you just watched how these guys that have been trained to, hey, we're going to defend our country now against the Taliban, just melt away like, ice in the sun. And It was just like, it was painful to watch that. But it also, in a very sad way, it didn't shock me. Because like you said, it was just their mentality is, it's the Taliban. We can't fight against that.
And that's what I don't understand. If you know death is inevitable, if you're on that plane and you know death is inevitable, if you're in that country and you're dealing with, ISIS, ISIS-K, Taliban, anything you're dealing with, and you understand that death is inevitable,
then whom shall I fear?
Yeah, there's nothing left to fear, right?
Right.
Every day is the day you might die.
Right.
Every day is the day you might die. And because they're beheading people, they're killing people in the streets, they're stoning people, things like that. I'm not saying this is, I'm not stereotyping. I'm just saying this is what we see. I'm just saying if you wake up every day fearing and fearing and fearing and fearing and fearing, at what point do you go, okay, fine, I could have died yesterday, I could have died a week ago, I can die today, I could die next week, but I'm not going to let anyone else live in this fear.
Psychological warfare. It's like the baby elephant that's tied to the tree at a small age.
Right.
Yeah, and then as it grows larger, it thinks that it has to stay there.
Right.
Out of fear, because it's been whipped and told that it can't pull away from this tree, and then it could pull it over, pull it out and
Without any trouble.
and upend it.
And so, one thing, and as you were talking about, 9/11 and World War II and all these, and the people on the plane and so on and so forth, I was just thinking, like, I like to think that is truly an American characteristic. From the beginning, we said, you know what, we're not going to let you do this. You're not going to make us live in fear.
Yeah.
You're going to pay for making me feel fear.
Yeah.
But we're starting to see people in our country kowtow. We're starting to see people go, oh, it's okay. I'm scared. I'm scared. Protect me.
Safe space.
Yeah. And it's so strange to see that because this country has never been that way.
No.
Yeah, they've lost the rebel blood.
Yeah.
Fear is always there. You could go out, get blown up at any time, and it's going to be dynamite or mines out there that could kill you at any time. But fear also created heroes.
I mean, I have to walk in your front yard.
There's a lot of heroes that went out there. There's a lot of heroes that went out there with fear, but they still went and did what they had to do.
Yeah. And I always thought, I remember watching a series called Band of Brothers, and when they were going through the Battle of Bastogne.
Jackson 5?
Yeah, exactly.
Band of Brothers?
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry.
That was sisters.
No, that was the Brothers Band. You got that.
Gotcha.
You got the title mixed up.
It wasn't making the band, it was breaking the band?
Yeah, exactly.
Because that's what their dad did to them. Anyway, go ahead, sorry.
No. But important point, we got to differentiate. But they talked about the bombings in Bastogne. The Germans would just pound the ever-loving, and they said, you just didn't know. Those artillery shells would fall anywhere and everywhere. And you'd think, hey, I'm in the safest spot ever. And the next thing you know, it's like, boom, and it's gone. And they said you'd see two things. You'd see the rookie guys, the replacements coming in. And they were the ones running around like chickens with their heads cut off, running, I got to find a safe spot. And then they look and they see these veterans just sitting there calmly eating their food or just, ducked down in their hole just waiting for it to be over. And they said, the guys come up, it's like, what are you guys doing? Yeah. He's like, I've seen my friends blown to smithereens. And it could be where I'm at, could be where they're at. You just don't know where that's going to happen. So say I run to this spot and I think, well, now I'm safe, and that's exactly where that next shelf hits. You just don't know. So it's like, why am I going to run around like a crazy person if you just know, life is like that though. You don't know. And it's like, if we're just going to live in fear of what life throws at us, then are we really living? Kind of like, I think that's a William Wallace quote. Is it really living if we're just in abject fear of what the government's going to do or what, the CDC is going to say or what Dr. Our Lord and Savior, Dr. Fauci.
What's that? Or what the sniffles is today.
Yeah. But it's just one of those things. It's like, you take a chance. No matter what you do, you're taking a chance. So I never got to the point where I'm like, let that pride sink in. Like, I'm good. I'm going to be fine. I just had this knowledge in the back of my head when this pandemic hit and the masking thing took place. I got to a point where I was like, you know what? If I'm going to get it, it's going to happen regardless if I'm wearing a mask, if I'm vaccinated or not. And obviously we've seen that. And so I just refused to live in fear of it. I knew it was there. I knew it could hit me. And I knew people were saying, well, if you don't have the vaccine, it's going to be a lot worse for you. And I just got to a point where I was like, you know what? I'm good with that. Not that I'm looking to die or that I want to die, but I'm ready. If it happens, I'm ready for it. And that's where it changed in my head a lot of things. Because, again, that was something that, I had to figure that out. And the Lord obviously gave me some wisdom on that, too.
And there's still people fear of that.
Yeah, it's foolish to live in that fear. It's foolish to live in that fear.
Right.
And that's how we end up with people by themselves in their car with a mask on.
I just know I made it 3 weeks of sitting in my house. 3 weeks. The third week I was sitting in my house. I looked outside at everybody and I was like, I'm just going to go find a place that's crowded and just breathe their air. Because I'm serious. It sounds hilarious.
Right. No.
But like I sat inside and I was like, this is breaking me more than whatever. Yeah. I'm confident. I'm confident my immune system can take it.
Yeah.
And if it can't, I would rather do it. I'd rather live or die that way than be in here. And once I have, this strain out of the way, granted, we didn't know how rapidly it was going to mutate, but it was still one of those things like, once I have it out of the way, I don't have to fear.
Yeah. Right. You rolled through that thing twice, right? Like a tank?
Yeah, I got it twice.
Like a tank.
Wow. Yeah, it was little shivers for 3 hours one time. The second time I just thought I had a runny nose.
So it didn't just roll over you, it turned around and ran over.
It came back.
It
came back
over you.
And that fear brought more damage than just being feared, because people had to stay home.
Yeah.
It mentally hurt them.
Yeah.
Right.
And it was no good.
Especially extroverts, man. I mean, we're used to being around people.
There's two guys on this side of the table, that's for sure.
Well, that's why I couldn't work from home. I knew if I got stuck at home all the time and I wasn't going anywhere, I wasn't doing it, because I was going between where I worked, where there was maybe 3 other people maybe, plus me, and going back home. That was the extent of my thing. But I was still out, and I was still interacting with the people that were there, the 2 people that were there. And even just that little interaction was just enough to be like, okay, I can get through this. Because just me being stuck, I can be very reclusive. So I can get to that point where I just go out, go to work, go home, go work, go home. And that's not good. That's not good for me mentally. And like we talked about a little bit earlier, these kids are experiencing that whether they want to or not, because it's either the school system or the parents saying, nope, not going to happen. And then it's like, why are these kids, so, angry, frustrated,
I remember
depressed?
Back before it actually even kicked off, before COVID was a thing. And I remember discussing with one of my coworkers, because we had 3 of us in a little office. And it was no bigger than this studio. I mean, it seemed maybe it was a little bigger, but 3 guys in one little place working all day long on computers, and we're cheek to cheek sometimes. It felt like, but right.
You guys are cozy.
Yeah,
which cheeks?
A little too cozy,
Which
right?
cheeks?
That's
That
good.
was
That's
what
a
I was
valid
gonna
question, right? And so I had thank God we were essential, because I'm too much of a social creature. But beforehand, I remember discussing it and thinking like, okay, well, this thing is happening over there in China. It's over there. I remember like just before we had bird flu and some other different strains of things, and
we've had hoof and mouth. We've had all kinds of weird.
Even
all
the
these
monkeypox.
Yeah, that's a current thing now. But but it was always like, well, it got managed and it happened over there. It happened away. So it's like, well, it's not. It's we haven't seen a case over here yet. And then it was like overnight and gangbusters, right?
Yep.
And it was all of a sudden, it was like, okay, things are going to lock down. And then the streets were empty. And like Alan talked about, like being an extrovert, and you're just like, okay, you see the same 3 people every day and going, like twiddling my thumbs. And when am I going to see other people that we're used to seeing? And we used to have all these people together and having fun and going to the park and throwing a Frisbee is not possible anymore. What, can we just do that? Yeah. So yeah, that was a lot of fear to manage just to get through that, just to deal with the disconnect, because we're social creatures by nature. Not even just extroverts. Introverts also need that social connection because we're human beings and we need social connection.
Well, yeah, introverts more so, because without that connection, they just, like he said, I don't know where the young man who and I won't say his name, but who shot up this Texas school. I don't know what he went through, but a lot of the things that you heard about what other people had said about him, whether it was friends or family, were just saying, oh yeah, he had, he was just so, he was by himself and he just couldn't interact, and he just had this, and some of his friends like, yeah, there was something off about him. We just didn't say anything.
Yeah,
it's like,
but
this is
that's
what we
evil.
hear. Oh, it is, and I'm not
Just
excusing.
You got problems and this and that. You don't go to a school and start killing out 2 years old and 4-year-old graders.
Right. No, and there's no excuse for that. I'm not excusing him at all. I'm just saying what leads.
God never forgives him.
What leads someone to get to that point where it's just like, well, this is all I have left. This is all I can do.
Before we get into that a little bit too far, because we do have an article about that later on, but so we've got to shorten time here because we've kind of went off the rails here. So let's tell some stories about fear, things that we've feared. For me, I remember when I was a teenager, and we were walking, me and my friend, we were walking his niece and her friend home. They were a little bit younger than us. That maybe 13, 14 years of age is when what they were, and we were, I think, 17. And we had to go past it wasn't a gang house, but they certainly operated drugs out of there, but they pretended they were a gang. Those type of guys, but there was plenty of them. And they were hooting and hollering at the girls that we were walking back to their house, and we knew that it was going to be trouble. And I had to figure out, okay, something's going to happen, something's going to go down. How do we manage this? What is the best outcome that can come from this? Because as we get about a block down the road, I can see out of the corner of my eye when I look back that they're now running after us. So I told the girls, run as fast as you can. Now, thinking that my friend was going to stick by my side and we were going to turn and try to fend off as many as we could, I found myself by myself. He was just as afraid of the group as the young girls were. And so I said, forget it. I'm doing this. I'm going to stand my ground for these young ladies. And I had to put that fear away. And I just had to let God handle it. And I managed to knock out a couple of young men, but it didn't last too long before I was on the ground and jumped. But the girls got away okay, and I ultimately came out okay, and the situation did ultimately get handled in a very particular way that I won't divulge on this podcast. But I had to do what I had to do. I knew that I had to stand my ground. I knew that I had to deal with that fear, because I knew that there was going to be 15 to however many they had. I didn't know how many they had, but I knew how many they were going to use by the time they got up to me. There was at least 5 on me. And let me tell you, there's no winners in a situation like that. And this is not a pride thing. This is just I knew what I had to do, and I stood my ground and controlled that fear. And one of the scariest moments, yeah, for sure. So it was like from that point on, anytime, because those situations come up a lot in a neighborhood, particular kinds of neighborhoods, and the kind of neighborhood that I grew up in. Alan had similar situations happen, I'm sure. And so it was after that time, because before then, I always pretty well handle myself. But after that time, it was always like this little voice in the back of my head. If this situation rose again, it was like, am I going to find myself by myself again?
Mm-hmm.
And, but I learned to manage, because I actually, there a few years later, I did end up finding myself by myself again, because the fellas that I was hanging out with,
you need to get some new
friends. I circled back to some good friends. So I'm glad to have guys like Alan back in my life, because we were friends with small children, and so that's been a blessing. And guys like Louis come into my life through happenstance, and we've become probably the best of friends as well. And
who may or may not have landmines in his front yard.
Yeah,
we're not going to say.
May or may not. And very large, very, very tall fences. Big, beautiful fences. But yeah, that helped me. These guys have been here, and Sterling, I got to thank you from behind the producer's desk. And I can't see your face from over here. He's hiding behind
now.
Because I got to thank these guys. I got to take a moment to thank these guys for being in my life and helping me getting over the fear of not starting this show, of actually dipping in and trial by fire, making me eat my own words and doing it. And so we managed that fear, and here we are. We're at episode 21, speaking with Jeremy Hess.
Yeah,
and we're doing it, man.
Yeah, we are. Absolutely.
Alan, you got a story about fear for us?
Story about fear. There's Sterling over there. He's very intimidating.
You got to watch out for
man. He has his fist in his other hand.
You got to watch out for the quiet ones there.
Right?
You really do. You really do.
He seems very stabby. There you go.
As he clicks his pen.
So fear. There's definitely instances of dealing with being outnumbered. There's definitely instances of like my heart falling out of rhythm. That was something, right?
Yeah.
But at some point you just have to go, well, it is what it is, and we have to deal with it. But really, I think I hate to go this route, but when my daughter was little, she had, and apparently a lot of kids do this, when they feel pain, they hold their breath. Okay. And probably the most fearful I was, she was getting in the car. She was getting into my car. I went inside to grab something of hers. I heard her scream. I opened the door, and she's running toward me. She's little. She's maybe 2 or 3 years old. And she is running toward me as fast as she can. And as soon as she gets within inches of my hands, she just goes limp and falls into my hands. And I have no idea what's happened. Like literally I've been 10 feet away. Like she's right outside my door, getting in my car. And I'm just grabbing something for her, and I hear her scream, and she had shut her fingers in the door, right?
Yeah.
And shut her fingers in the door, and she started holding her breath, and I had no idea. I turned my back for a moment, and I came back, and she's running toward me, and then suddenly, right as she gets to my hands, her body just drops, and she's out. She is completely out, and I'm freaking out because I don't know what happened to my kid. Like, what happened? Did something hit her in the head?
Right.
Is she having something going on that's internal that we can't see? That's what's going on? Is she going to come to? And I just remember that panic. Like I don't know what to do. I can't fix the situation. I'm used to fixing everything. I'm not used to being scared of anything, and I'm used to fixing everything. And this was something that was out of my hands, And so finally, she kind of came to, and I immediately called the hospital. And I just remember, like, I like to pride myself as being on being a person that doesn't overreact and that manages my emotions and stays logical. It's kind of my whole shtick, right? But I just remember calling, and they said, "How are her hands?" And I was like, I don't care about her hands. We can figure that out. Like, what happened to her neurologically that causes this problem? Like, I need to come in. We need to get a scan. We need to figure this out. They're like, how are her hands? And I'm like, you guys are morons. Is there someone there with a PhD who can talk to me? Because I don't care about her hands right now. And they're like, look, honestly, at the end of the day, this happens to a lot of kids. But it was just being able to break through that fear and just analyze it, figure it out, finally push the emotions down and realize that I was being actually illogical. I wouldn't necessarily say that was me fighting through my fear. I don't think so. I think that was me just learning. But there are very few times I can think where I was actually fearful, that I was actually scared. And it's not big tough guy show here. This isn't that at all.
No.
Right.
It's just I process that differently.
Right.
But that was one moment that will always stick with me, where I was literally scared. Because scared for my life is one thing, but that's just my responsibility for her is way more valuable to me than my own life.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. I'm over my I'm over telling people my weaknesses. Got one for us, Louis?
I know he does.
I had quite a few fears. One of them was when my kid was crossing the street. He was with his two big sisters, but he decided to run out in the streets and a car hit him. The wheel caught him, dragged him half a block, and he's laying there looking at me like, Daddy, and hopeless. I thought he was going to die. My fear was that he was going to die, and I prayed to God, please don't let him die, please. And I was so mad that he got hit. I was just yelling out, who hit him? Who hit him? Because I wanted to attack the person who did it. But nobody was saying, they didn't dare say who it was because they knew what I was going to do.
Yeah.
And I was in fear of that kid, of dying. But I'm glad that he survived and came out all right. And that was one of my fears. Another of my fears was I'm coming home from work. I get off the bus. I'm walking down the street. And I see these two guys grab this Mexican guy. They put his coat over his head, and they dragged him into this abandoned building. One of them was standing there like he had a gun. And I'm looking at him. They both went into the abandoned building. I ran towards the end where there was an opening. I'm standing there, and I'm telling God, please help me. I was scared to go in there. But I was saying, God, help me. What could I do to help this guy out? And I guess he put it in my mind to say, and I yelled out, police. There's the police. I'm coming in. And when I went in, they ran. I grabbed the guy. I pushed them out and saved them from maybe getting killed or worse. But that day I was really scared. I thought I was going to get shot, but something inside me made me go in there and help him out.
Goes right back to his first verse.
Yes.
At the top, right?
We know there'll be troubles.
Yeah. So you prayed out to him, right?
Yeah.
And then he was like, here's your cape, my son. Go be a superhero.
He put in my mind what to say.
I'm thinking of the crappy scenario where these jerks run out the back door and then call the police because you impersonated a police officer. Like these guys are breaking the law. You scare them. They call the police and have you arrested for impersonating a police officer.
There goes Louis.
I figured,
Bye, Louis.
Same police, they get scared and run,
Yeah.
I don't know.
That was perfect.
Maybe they would have gave Louis a medal saying, hey, you're or a little certificate. Welcome to the police force.
You can only
The
hope,
bad
right?
thing about it, at the end, I told him, you want me to walk you home? And he goes, no, leave me alone. I'll be all right.
Yeah.
And he just walked away. But I was glad in my mind that he was all right.
Yeah.
He picked up his groceries from the floor because he dropped all his groceries. And he just kept walking.
Just kept walking. That works.
Yeah.
Well, I think we've got down to the politics portion because Jeremy, you've told us quite a few stories of some things that you feared. And
well, I will say this: there was one time where my mom, I was living with my parents at the time, and I heard my mom downstairs, and usually she's rummaging around doing something, and all of a sudden I heard like a yelp or something like that, and then this thump 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 thump. And now I'm upstairs and I'm thinking, what was that? I thought she dropped like a laundry basket. And I called out to her, didn't hear her. Called out to her again, didn't hear her. And I ran probably the fastest I've ever run down the stairs, down to the basement stairs, and she was down at the bottom of the basement stairs with her leg tangled up. I mean, it looked the worst. That was probably the scariest thing I'd ever seen in my life. And it was terrified. Like, I just lost my mom, like my mom was dead. And I ran down there. I had the presence of mind because, there was something in my mind that was saying, just focus, make sure she's all right, make sure she doesn't move anything. While the rest of me is just like, oh, my word, what's going on? And, it was a God thing because she didn't break a bone. She hit her head pretty hard because it's all concrete down there. But it was one of those things where I had the presence of mind to tell my aunt who came to the top of the stairs, call 911, call 911. And it was the scariest thing, but it was like that, kind of like that training thing that kicks in. Just like make sure she doesn't move her head. It was like all that stuff just flashed in my eye. I knew that was the Lord helping me get through that to help her. And like I said, it was a miracle. She didn't break anything. She just had,
Good little goose egg for a minute.
Yeah.
So 3 minutes later, the basket was rolled away, and she was resurrected.
She was. But it was like, and the worst thing she was worried about, it's like, oh, my basement floor is filthy. And all these.
Well, she cleaned some of it.
Well, she did. But she was more worried that they were going to see the dust on the basement floor than she was. Oh, my head. And no, she's like, oh, this. I'm like, I'm not. Yeah. It's going to be okay, Mom.
That's a woman.
So, yeah. But it was like one of those moments where it was like, okay, I feel she's going to be okay now because she's more worried about it.
Right. She had her wits about her.
But that was a God thing. Like God got me through the, presence of mind and all that. So I just had to tell that story because it's a
good one.
Yeah.
For our first story this week, going into the politics portion, we're going to bring some levity because this story was found by my wife earlier this week, and I laughed so hard reading just the headline. I had tears coming out of my eyes. So coming from the businessinsider.com, CNN accidentally sent welcome baskets to employees who had been laid off after the CNN Plus streaming service flopped. CNN accidentally sent welcome baskets to employees who were laid off after the CNN Plus streaming service shuttered. The paid streaming subscription service launched on March 29th, 2022, and announced it was shutting down on April 21st. Insider previously reported. A week later, hundreds of laid-off staffers received welcome gifts. What was that you said earlier today, Jeremy?
Welcome to unemployment. Right. I was like, in my mind, it's like best timing
ever.
Way to go, CNN.
That's what we get with shortages,
Kudos.
Right? They couldn't get everything together. They're like, oh, man, we have to source this basket, and we got to source this jerky, and we got to source, it's not going to be animal anything. But, they're going to source all these different things, and then something held that up, and they're like, oh, crap, the last thing came in. Oh.
And I just want to imagine that it was like a fruit basket. So by the time the fruit got there, it was like rotted and moldy.
I thought you were talking about their staff.
Well,
that's not far off.
That fruit basket was closed.
It only likes small children, apparently. So, right. So some of these gift baskets apparently had. You're welcome, Alan. I knew you'd like that.
Thank you.
Some of these gift baskets even had encouraging notes attached.
Oh, wow.
Saying, this is an incredible time to be a part of CNN. That was a quote on the one from one of the cards.
Fantastic.
That was according to Wall Street Journal. Another one said, quote, build relationships and take time to connect with colleagues and learn so that you make the most of your time here.
Well, you can't write this stuff, man.
No, you can't.
Well, they did.
But no.
They wrote themselves out of it.
And now
say your line again.
Line.
Say your line.
Welcome.
No. They can't write this stuff, man.
They can't write this stuff.
But they did.
Hey, man, you're clever, Alan. You're so clever.
So satisfying, right? So CNN,
like I said, best timing ever.
CNN spent as much as $250 million on launch.
Oh, man.
And saw meager audience engagement out of the gate, never surpassing 10,000 viewers at any time per CNBC.
I wonder if that 250,000 included the welcome baskets.
Right. Right.
We had to shut it down. Why? It was the welcome baskets.
The baskets put us over budget.
Wait, excuse me. Did you say the welcome baskets set us over? Maybe.
So my thought was what had happened was they were having supply chain issues, getting the baskets out, so they had to wait, and they're like, well, I'll just send the baskets when they come in, and then
Right.
so hey, CNN Plus shut down, and they were like, well, they said to send the baskets when they came in, so let's go ahead and send them out. But, it went UPS, and then, it got lost, trampled, and then showed up at their front doorstep a little late.
It's the only place CNN looked for quality products.
So now they're just a bunch of basket cases,
Yes.
sadly.
Unemployed basket cases.
No, that was
Wow.
great. I remember when you sent that to me, I was dying laughing. You said I was driving, and I'm one of those horrible people. I'm like, oh, ding, it's coming from Josh.
Oh, this is juicy.
Like the fruit in their baskets.
Yeah. Yep. Well, it wasn't juicy by the time I got in.
Well, and I also imagine that like, oh no, we've sent these baskets out after we fired them. How do we make it up? And I'm waiting for the story to come across that's saying that they sent out sorry baskets, but they were the same thing. Also with encouraging cards like,
Keep smiling. We're in this together.
CNN takes out loan for $300 to produce baskets.
CNN is here for you.
best
Timing.
ever.
Wow.
What do you think, Louis? What? He's so lost.
You can't even say anything. It's like,
No words.
what can you say?
Part of life.
Part of life
That's
is getting a
what-
basket after you're unemployed from a job.
Well, that was one of the cards. Oh, that's life.
Now
Signed,
they're hanging
Louis.
out in the unemployment line with their baskets,
Right.
making split. They're probably doing.
It's just bread.
Grabbing the bananas and making banana splits.
Oh, my word.
It's just bread and soup. It's just bread and soup.
But it's not even real soup. It's like powdered stuff. That you
nice.
just add water.
Foraged. It's all just foraged. Oh my gosh. Oh man.
At least they send us Aquafina water.
Isn't this stuff like 0.09% salt, so they're going to get more thirsty anyway? Just
man.
torture us with this rotten fruit and Aquafina.
Yeah, it's great.
What was his name that left Fox Street? Fox Street.
Fox Street.
Fox.
Oh, he left Fox News
Yeah.
and went over to Chris
CNN.
Wallace.
Yeah.
Chris
Could you
Wallace.
imagine him in the unemployment line telling the lady, I left on Fox to go to CNN and got fired. She said, I could see
Because
her
of
saying,
our stellar economy that we have right now under Joe Biden. You're welcome.
former Vice President Joe Biden. No, I do imagine that, Louis. I imagine him standing in the unemployment line, like trying to tell everybody like he's a crazy person. Honestly, last year, or well, a couple years ago, I was moderating the presidential debate. It really happened.
I left Fox for CNN and all I got was this stupid basket.
It's probably on a T-shirt,
And he's wearing the basket on his head.
and it's not even screen print. Just
No, it's.
that crappy iron-on vinyl. That
I was thinking it was just marker. Marker on a white tee.
I thought I was going to be something great in that show. But it just went.
I wonder if it had like those
Oh,
miniature
goodness.
bottle of alcohol. So he's just sitting there like, I'm going to be fine. I'm going to be fine.
it's never enough.
There's always, hey, if you're looking for a place to scoop trash, there's always MSNBC. So
Oh, there you go.
Jen Psaki will gladly move over.
There you go.
Yeah, going over there, Chris Wallace. I'm sure that
man.
they'll give you a job.
You have to walk on there and say, hey, you see this? You see this color? I hate it. I got a job now.
Eat that, mother trucker.
Nice save. This is a family show. Okay, so
I like that you think so. No, I'm joking.
So, our second article this week, slightly less levity, but I agree with it. So, comes from comes from the Independent. Reading: San Francisco Archbishop defies Pope's advice by banning Pelosi from receiving communion. San Francisco's Archbishop has defied the Pope's advice by banning Nancy Pelosi from receiving communion over her support of abortion rights. Our Archbishop Salvatore Cordileone announced the action against the House Speaker, who is a lifelong Catholic, after her vote in Congress to codify the Roe v. Wade amid the Supreme Court controversy.
Well, if she wasn't a lifelong Catholic and her parents weren't either, there's a good chance she could have been aborted to begin with.
A long time ago.
Talk about managing fear.
We would have thanked God for it, too.
I'm so thankful.
You said he was the Archbishop in San Francisco.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Now, talk about managing fear.
Yeah.
Right?
That takes a brave man to stay there, especially a Catholic.
Well, that's his right.
Wow. Yeah, no.
Yeah,
I mean,
his
hey,
job.
that's, again, managing fear. I imagine he's got a lot of people out there that are against him. Obviously, Nancy Pelosi is, if she can remember that. But
Brave man. It's Archbishop Salvatore Cordileone. Sounds like that kind of name, that invokes in my brain like mafia boss. But hey, if you can tell.
he's part of the family. You don't mess with the family.
You don't get communion.
I mean, it couldn't be that bad there. I mean, I'm not saying this, but it used to be the left's opinion to, tear apart anyone of the Catholic faith because, priests were supposedly pedophiles. But now the left is full of pedophiles, so it's open arms for everyone.
I mean,
now all of the left, everyone on the left is now Catholic by their own stereotype.
Well, that means everyone in Hollywood is Catholic then.
That's true.
Well, not everyone, but large portion.
not far off.
No. Yeah.
But they got to get gluten-free Jesus.
Yeah.
Another one should be Whoopi. She should be not get have compassion either.
Oh, well.
She's against the Pope.
She had said on The View this week, she said, "It's not your job, man." That's what she told the Archbishop.
Actually is.
It's kind of his only job is to tell people exactly what they can and cannot do, as there is a hierarchy within the church.
Well, he's not just a bishop. He's the Archbishop. So I think he's got some say in what things can and can't be done.
That woman just keeps throwing out what do you call it?
False information.
Misinformation?
False news.
False information.
Fake
Always
news.
Giving out
Fake news.
Fake news.
And
Fake news, Whoopi.
And while all of her fans keep throwing out small children they've aborted.
Wow.
I can't believe they do that, child.
Sorry.
Hey,
I try to find the middle ground between my show and your show occasionally.
Yeah.
It's my body, and I do what I want with my body.
It's true. Just keep it over there, Whoopi.
Well, she's a sister and she has to act. So,
Okay.
thank you, Seattle. Good night. I'm joking.
She would have to get in the habit of that.
Oh, yeah. There you go.
Two.
Yeah. Two.
Yeah, we liked acting Whoopi. We don't like Whoopi as herself.
Well, she did play a hyena. I think that's kind of ironic. I'm sorry.
Alan nearly lost his water.
He did. I'm sorry.
Is it in your nose still?
It's okay.
Your sinus is moisturized now.
Oh, they're fantastic.
All right.
Best timing.
You just cleaned out all that pollen we've been getting.
Best timing ever. I feel reinvigorated, guys. Thanks.
You got to lower that last part. That ever. That's what you do.
It's my high-pitched nasally voice.
Yeah.
What do you want from me?
Ever. Best timing ever. That was in stereo. Sorry for those who are listening.
And the rest of this program is going to get turned down wherever they're listening.
Turned down for what?
I yield my time. Like
Oh, my goodness.
I didn't hear that, Louis. Would you like to repeat that?
I will yield my time to Josh.
Oh, there are these words in the English language. There's some that just kind of like rub you the wrong way.
Oh.
Yeah,
Like the word
That's
sand.
like program. Like program.
program. Yeah,
Progressive.
yeah. Well, that rubs us all the wrong way.
I just don't want them to rub me.
Well, you're too old. Oh.
I like it. I like it.
oh.
That's getting a fist bump there. That's getting a fist bump there. Josh is uncomfortable.
But the word
His
yield.
cheeks are turning red. Wow.
Yes, because it's
sorry.
one of those like, it crawls right up underneath the skin cells and just like sandpaper.
Right.
It rubs me the wrong way. It really does. I don't know if it's just like because I hate seeing it in traffic. Yield sign. Do I stop or do I go or do I slow down? What is this thing?
What is that? What does this triangle sign mean?
I just want to see
don't get it.
four-way yield.
Yeah,
That's what a roundabout is. It's a four-way yield.
yeah. 4-way.
That sounds like a 4-way pileup to me.
It's
Right.
made by the devil himself. I'm convinced.
That's why they got roundabouts.
Yeah, the roundabouts were constructed by the devil himself. I'm convinced. I'm telling you. This is an absolute truth.
Avoid Carmel. Sorry. For those who don't know, Carmel is the roundabout capital of Indianapolis and Indiana.
I hate
I
it.
think
maybe the United States.
I think it might be the roundabout capital of the United
US.
States. Carmel, Indiana. Yeah.
I don't know who invented them, but
The devil. I just told you.
I love them, guys.
Well, you've been voted out.
I know. And I just don't like the fact. I don't like them using my tax dollars for them, but I love them.
You are the minority in this group on that.
They're like, let's put some fancy
Hey.
flowers in the middle. I'm like, no.
Now that he's a minority, he can get free stuff, right?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, definitely.
I
Like
this.
free roundabouts.
Free roundabouts, all of them. I want one at the end of my driveway.
They're gonna give you a Lego playset, and it's just roundabouts with cars. It's like, oh, yep, that
with a
roundabout
fountain
didn't
in
work.
the middle.
Oh wow!
Oh, I don't know how we got from communion to this, but
Here we are.
here we are.
Hey, that's what happened to delivery trucks that were delivering the thank you baskets. Or the welcome baskets.
Way too many roundabouts.
Many roundabouts. What is this sign? What does it mean? Do I stop or do I go?
They just keep going around and around and around. Where do we get off?
They were also CNN employees.
Oh man!
They ironically got fired immediately after the baskets were delivered.
I like it. I like it.
In this economy,
That's fantastic though. That is.
You know what I don't like about this? We're going to end on like a somber note. Didn't we do this last week too?
We did do this last week, and there was some talk about it early on in the show, but it's just these are the types of things that we have to tackle, and I think all of our hearts broke this week when we heard the news about this. But the last story coming from the Texas Tribune, Governor Gregg Abbott says he was misled about poor police response to, I don't know how to say it correctly, Uvalde shooting?
Uvalde.
Uvalde. Yeah.
Uvalde shooting. Quote, I am livid about what happened, the governor said at a tense press conference in Uvalde. Quote, the information I was given turned out in part to be inaccurate, and I am absolutely livid about that. Now, he was given information that these police officers, when they got there, they immediately went in. That's not what happened. When they responded, they got there, and they were outside for, I think, the time.
Quite a while, yeah.
They said I heard an hour.
An hour. Yeah, so 45 minutes to an hour.
45 minutes to an hour. With the parents yelling to the officers to get in there.
Right.
That was the part that hit me the hardest.
They also said that he barricaded himself in there, and when some police officers went in, they got shot up, and they came right back out. So I don't know how true that was, but
I mean, I understand attempting to establish a perimeter. I get that, but there wasn't a time, or that was not the time or the place to establish a perimeter. You're going into an active shooter situation where children's lives are on the line, and on the other end of that, I mean, again, this is not sticking up for them, but I'm saying, like, I would like to think that they were doing their best because that's a very small community. And a lot of those people, a lot of those officers had children, family members, of course, in there. So you'd think they would do their best. But I mean, oh my gosh, an hour?
Yeah.
With parents there.
It seems to me that they let the fear.
They did not manage their fear properly.
Did not manage their fear properly.
Or their time. And my thing is, it's like, we want to talk about, what the left likes to push, which is defunding police. That they want to put it on, guns. Oh, it's a gun subject again. And it's like, we're missing the mark on that big time. If we care about our children, which I'm not saying they don't care, or those police officers didn't care, but it's like there's got to be a level of training, like in the military, where training kicks in and overrides your fear or whatever whatever they're trying to, like, set up a perimeter. Do it quickly. Get in there. You're putting your life on the line, yes, but you're doing something that you're being paid to do. You're doing something you're trained to do.
And you're wearing the proper gear to do it.
Yeah.
And these are kids, young kids.
Defenseless.
Yes.
Yeah.
You saw, look, Biden gave $40,000 to the Ukraine, but yet he don't give no money to defund these schools, to put police officers in there to protect these kids. It's really ridiculous. It's unbelievable what's going on out here.
Yeah. The left says to act, right? Mm-hmm. That's their big shtick this week, right? It was like, we need to act. These 14 children died and these 2 teachers died. And it's in vain if we don't act. By taking away rights from all the good citizens out there? No. We need a solution that works for everybody. This has been said many times, and I'm sure you're gonna hear it from here too, because it is the best solution. If a kid, this young man who wore a dress for some reason, went into this school because it said gun-free zone, plain and simple.
Easy.
Yeah.
Easy. I mean,
easy pickings is good pickings, right?
I like a sign that
no
says
protection.
I can do whatever I want.
I mean, I would rather schools have a sign that says something along the lines of employees are armed and trained to use their weapons. I mean, that's exactly. Even if there's no one in there with a gun,
there could be that day. There might not be. Who wants to roll the dice on that, though?
Right.
There's a reason that when you get that little seed in their head, that seed of doubt in their head, like, if I walk in here, I may not even get a chance to shoot anybody. I may be dead the moment I breach those doors. Someone's going to be like, that's it, I'm dead. You get that seed, they're going to think twice.
That's why they're... Go ahead.
And how could those doors be open? That door be open,
Exactly.
They should have been closed. I don't understand that either.
To the point we were talking about, I mean, that's why we see in cities where guns are legal, we see less people be victims of armed robbery. Because there's that, I'm going to steal something from you. I'm going to pull a gun on you and steal your wallet. Well, you can do that in Chicago because the law-abiding citizens don't have guns.
Right.
But you can't do that here. There's a good chance that when they go to pull their wallet, they pull a gun as well. So I mean, same thing. What we're saying is, you take down the signs that say gun-free zone. You put up a sign that says, employees are armed and trained to use their weapons.
Sidearms.
Even if they're not, it still says there's a potential that you're not going to make it. Right. There's a potential you don't get a chance to do what you want to do.
It's a wondering that this is Texas, where you could buy a gun at any time, and mostly everybody's armed there. What happened to those teachers? Why they didn't have a gun with them?
That's
anything like that.
So that is what I'm talking about right there, Louis.
That's the question.
Teachers who want to, because I know that there's some teachers that are not going to want to, and that's fine. But the teachers who want to, let them be armed. If they're willing to go through the training and learn how to properly use a firearm, let them be trained so that they can be on the premises and protect those children.
And so they're not laying their own lives down to protect those children.
Exactly.
I'm not saying they shouldn't, but I'm saying the only way teachers have at this moment to protect those children
is to be a human shield.
Is to push them up out of a window or to dive in front of a bullet, something like that. They don't have the ability to actually protect their own lives, but put your own oxygen mask on before you apply it to someone else, right? Why aren't they armed? I mean,
well, and you got to think 10 minutes is too long to wait for help to come.
Oh,
let alone half an hour, 45 minutes, an hour. I can't even imagine being in that situation as a teacher with those children in your protection, knowing I can't do anything except barricade the door. But if he breaks in, if he shoots the door out, what am I going to do? And instead, you got to wait on a police force that took an hour to finally get in there and actually put this guy down. And it's like, outside of that, you have a security person, or more than that, and a police, whatever teacher, pulling arms and going through that school and looking for this guy actively and knowing, well, like you said, there's a chance I'm going to die today, but I'm going to die knowing that I'm protecting these kids from whoever this person is, whoever this evil person is. And knowing that, I would rather be that teacher or that security personnel knowing I have some way of protecting these kids and answering this instead of waiting on somebody for an hour to finally get in there and take care of this thing.
At the very least, a preventative measure is to have
landmines.
Well, that's Louie's way of doing things.
There you go.
But I mean, you could use CNN Plus gift baskets.
That definitely
will stop them at the door for sure.
Definitely stops everything.
But no funny feeling. These kids, they ain't having a chance to grow up to be whatever they want to be, doctors, nurses, whatever. Their life was just ended there. Yeah. And
could have been prevented.
Yes. And they're all with God now, and at least they don't have to be in this cruel world.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they're going to be angels now with the God.
Yeah, they'll be with God for sure. And like it's the very least the best I think one of the best preventative measures. If we're not going to arm the teachers, let's get cops in plain clothes, or veterans that have, they need a paycheck. How much money are we sending to schools every year? I think it's like $400,000 per school or something like that. It equates out to. I think they can afford to pay a couple armed guards that you don't know if they're armed guards or if they're just a teacher's aide walking around the school. The kids don't know the difference, right? And neither would any potential shooters.
I saw someone post on Twitter the other day, and I'm sorry I didn't gather this because I didn't. It was before we talked about this. Yeah. He showed a picture of the veteran who hangs out in the office at his daughter's high school every day with his AR slung across his shoulder in plain clothes, but with his AR.
Oh, I've seen that.
And he said, I'm so thankful that he comes to work every single day and protects our kids, at our school that's gated and has a fence all the way around it and it's protected. But just knowing if someone does breach that, they have to deal with him, a combat trained, war hardened veteran who is going to do everything he possibly can to protect our children.
Right. They were talking about that they should take some veterans that are retired and protect the schools. Or
they need money too, right?
Security guards, yes. They do.
Well, it's interesting that, you can be a government official and be surrounded by people with guns, even probably fully automatic guns, and not worry about people coming in and attacking, because people know if I go in there, I'm probably going to be dead before I even get into the hall or wherever they're meeting. And yet they're like, no, we shouldn't do that in schools. Let's put more regulations on, people, like you said, legal and well-meaning people that own guns. Let's put more regulations on them. So,
it's harder for them to protect.
Harder for them. And yet criminals, obviously, they're just going to ignore all that.
What are you talking about? When you make drugs illegal, drugs go away. When you make abortion illegal, abortion goes away.
Right.
When you make guns illegal, they're just going to go away. That's what we keep seeing.
Yeah.
Well, I think that we can bring this one to a close. Now, just want to say before we go, here at Revolver Broadcasting, our baskets won't go out too late. So you got to keep us in business. We got to be able to keep doing this every week. So
only because we have to make the baskets for ourselves.
He's got a sweatshop down here he's not telling you about.
Don't tell people that because they'll believe it.
But I was kind of hoping for welcome to unemployment basket. So,
well, then go work for CNN Plus.
There you go.
It'll happen overnight. So,
well, not the baskets.
No, maybe 2 weeks after, at least. They're stuck in the roundabout still.
Right. Still.
All right. So I've been your host this week. Once again,
the hostess.
Host again this week.
Just make sure.
I'll correct it if I said it wrong. I don't know if I misspoke or not.
No, that was just Alan.
Just Alan.
His hearing's off. Oh. Forgot to turn his hearing aid up.
He's got to yield his time back to me. Should he stop or should he go? I don't know.
Yeah. He's still in the roundabout. Yeah.
Sure. He's the one that had your basket.
Yeah, there you go.
Okay.
That's the problem.
So I have been your host of Faith, Family, and Politics, Joshua Cummins. Thank you for joining us. We got our good friend Louis Rodriguez, host of Rodriguez Rants. Thank you for joining us, sir.
Thank you for having me.
It's always a pleasure. We got the man who brought the message this week, Jeremy Hess. Thank you for joining us, sir.
Thank you for having me. Glad
Last
to be here.
but not least, you know him, you love him, the host of Laughing Libertarian, Alan McFarland.
Hey, thanks a lot. I really do appreciate you having me on.
All right, brother.
And I will make a show this week.
Pressure.
If not, we're going to send him a basket.
Best.
I almost said words I can't say on
timing
ever.
Best. Exactly.
Tune in for my show to see the words I couldn't say here.
We'll see you next week. Bye.
Bye.
Goodbye.